You can't write down everything that an EMT or an AMT or a paramedic experiences out there in the field. But what you can do is give some foundational guidance. And when you're stuck and you don't know what to do, make the patient your foundation and do what you would do if that was your loved one.
Today, I'm joined by Dr. Casey Patrick. He's the medical director for Montgomery County Hospital District EMS here in Texas. In this conversation, we talk about what actually separates high-performance EMS systems from the rest, not just protocols, but how leaders think, how clinicians are developed, and how medical direction shapes culture and patient care. If you're an EMT, paramedic, or EMS leader who wants to understand how great systems build trust, accountability, and clinical judgment, this episode is for you. Well, Dr. Patrick, thank you so much for being on the EMTS Academy Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I really appreciate getting to join you today, and hopefully we have an excellent discussion.
Well, let's get right into it. How did you become an EMS physician?
Oh, man, that's a long and circuitous road. We don't want to make this a 4-part podcast, but I trained in emergency medicine at Indiana University back in the early 2000s. I finished residency in 2007. And my goal at that point was to be an emergency physician. You know, a lot of people in emergency medicine have other plans and move into things like critical care or EMS, for example, or they do ultrasound training or disaster or global health. And I really just wanted to work in an emergency department. I had a couple of very young children with my third on the way and had gone through college and med school and residency and was ready to, settle down with my family and my kids, start saving for college, leave the life of a resident fellow salary and work ED shifts. I don't have a background in fire EMS or law enforcement, so I'm a little bit probably in the minority in the EMS medical director world in that regard, and had really no plans to ever do this work after I finished residency. But I had been out working in the community and was feeling somewhat stable as an emergency physician. When you finish residency, you're just getting started. You're not anywhere near finished with anything. And those first few years in practice are really nerve-wracking. And by 2014 or 2015, I was feeling competent most days, and also a little bit unfulfilled. I wouldn't say burnout, but residency for us in emergency medicine is very much a team sport. We all band together against the difficulty and the nervousness and all of the stress that is residency. And so it creates a real bond of shared time and experience. So some 17 of my closest friends and colleagues and confidants are in that group. And then you go out and work in a single covered emergency department like I did and have. And there's not a whole group of people to share your cases with necessarily. It's not quite as close knit. You check in for your shift and you check out. Now I work with a great group of ED docs, but we don't really have and didn't have that same level of camaraderie. And so around that time, I was getting a little bit antsy. Like, is this really what the rest of my career is going to be like? Is there something else I should be doing? Missing that bond that we had as residents. And I got a call from Dr. Rob Dixon, one of my colleagues, and also an Indiana University graduate. We had some connections there. We didn't do residency together. He's older than I am by a little bit. And he called and said, "Hey, I'm going to be the medical director for Montgomery County Hospital District. I want you to be my assistant." And I said, "What? I don't know anything about EMS. I did my EMS write-outs as a resident, and I know the EMS that the general emergency physician is supposed to know, but I don't understand posting or shift bid or how to talk on the radio or anything about, really what you do for scene size up and management of an MCI on scene. Like, these are all things that, are pretty foreign to me. So why do you want me?" And he said, "Well, I want you to teach and you can figure the rest out." And I lucked into the most amazing group of people and a really awesome support group that I've had here at MCHD over the past 10 years, and was lucky enough to be able to learn those things on the job with a lot of patience and a lot of grace. And it's been the most fulfilling professional venture of my life, far and away. Getting to work on this team and taking it back to that whole residency team aspect. I was able to find my team again, and my quality clinical ops, really, the administrative staff and the command staff here at MCHD. That's my team now, and I couldn't be luckier to be a part of it.
And MCHD has done such a tremendous job. You guys got EMS Provider of the Year a couple years ago, or has
A
it been
couple years
longer than that?
ago, yeah, it's been a bit. I get them confused. I mean, nobody likes to hear somebody talk about how great they are, but we are very proud of what we have here, and it's a lot more than what anything that I've done personally or anything one person has done. We've had decades here in the county, and we're really standing on the shoulders of a lot of mentors and giants that were here long before I was, that have done really great things, both from a clinical side for sure, but really professionally, character, just kind of what our brand means here in Montgomery County is pretty special to us. And it's not something you can flip a switch and make happen. It's because we've been here and been in the county and represented and taken care of our community so well for so long. Like I said, I feel really lucky to be a part of the team. Yeah.
I got a chance to do a ride out and met Dr. Dixon and you and many members of the team and James Campbell and everybody. And I have to say, I've been, all over the country and you guys are top notch. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. What are some of the things that keep you up as a medical director at night?
Ooh, another good one. Realistically, it all goes back to the patient. That's what one of the real talking points that I learned from Dr. Dixon, and it sounds really simple. It becomes quite complex and also quite useful. And when we talk to new employees, our new employees all get a chance to sit down with the medical directors, and we introduce ourselves and we ask some icebreaker questions and we talk about our clinical expectations. And so if you've worked with us out there listening, you've sat through this talk. It used to be off the cuff, and I realized that when we did it, it became more and more of the same talking points. And our first house rule clinically at MCHD is that patients are our foundation. And that sounds obvious, but it really can be a guiding light or kind of a signpost when you think about those really amazingly complex situations y'all find yourself in the field with, you know, fire, law enforcement interaction, hospital, ED, receiving institution interaction, the public, the bystanders, the third party callers. So many of these situations, the middle of the night, weekend, substance use and abuse, mental health crisis, just all of the difficulty that is your job. And it's amazingly difficult. Some of these decisions are really hard, and they're impossible to put into a protocol in completeness. It's impossible. You can't write down everything that an EMT or an AMT or a paramedic experiences out there in the field. But what you can do is give some foundational guidance. And when you're stuck and you don't know what to do, make the patient your foundation and do what you would do if that was your loved one. I may not agree with it as the medical director, but we've got common ground when we have to discuss it or if we need to discuss it afterwards. Educationally, we can redirect good hearts all day, every day. Brains are easy to fix, hearts are a lot harder. So if we're focusing on the patient and we're thinking about what we would want for our family members, that's going to guide us into whatever protocol, physiology, pathway, um, dosing conundrum we're in. It really is what we try to live by and practice by, both in the field and as oversight and a teacher and as the medical director. So I always think about patient risk number one, and that's definitely what keeps me up at night the most. And really, have we provided as a clinical team education, quality, protocol, clarity, the tools that all EMS needs to allow that patient risk to be minimized and those patient outcomes to be maximized. And so I worry about, where are the gaps in the protocols? Where are the gaps in our education? What do we need to talk about more? How can we reach? And I think probably our 2025 concern going into 2026 is reach. How do we reach what now is approaching 400 paramedics? Folks always want to go back to the way that it was. And man, it'd be nice if MCHD was 100 paramedics and 12 trucks, but the county's exploded, and we're bigger, and we're spread out, and there are more trucks on the street, and trying to keep up with who all of our medics and EMTs are and know people's names and know a little bit about them is harder and harder every day. So how do we get FaceTime in synchronous educational situation? How do we get FaceTime in asynchronous situations? Who reads emails anymore? What if we need to? What if there's a just-in-time tidbit that's really important? How do we maximize the intake? Because not everybody checks their emails. Not everybody is going to read the bulletins. So we're really, really from a patient risk sounds pretty global, but in a more microscopic current way, trying to figure out how to reach our people and to still make sure they know that they have a medical direction team and they have a clinical team that works for them and that has their back and that wants to provide the best education, clinical protocols, quality review, and education on the backside. That's the holy grail. I don't know that we've got the answer, but we're constantly trying to innovate and trying to think through how that looks.
What are some of the methods that you're using or the communication channels that you're using, especially as you scale? I mean, this is no different than a business. As they get bigger and bigger, the span of control goes away. And like you said, at 100 paramedics, you can know everybody and know what their wife and how many kids they have. But with 400, that's just not possible. So what's working? And maybe if you want to share something that's maybe still a challenge for you.
Sure. So what's working and what's not? We're really trying to, so it sounds corporate speak, but we're really trying to leverage technology to help us. One of the things that I believe is working, and if you're an MCHD listener and you want to counter this one, feel free and send me an email, knock on my door. I'm happy to hear your input. These are just my thoughts. We love to do clinical case reviews or run reviews here at MCHD, both good, bad, and ugly. I feel like that if you can't learn from your experience and reflect on it, you're missing half of wisdom. Wisdom's not just time, it's time and reflection. But reflecting is hard when there are lessons to be learned. No one likes to look at their work and feel like they didn't do as good as they could. That's just not, in a human nature standpoint, that's not a great feeling. The crux of my job, our job as a medical direction team, though, is to review those calls, to look at the clinical care, and to provide good quality feedback. But feedback doesn't always equal praise. There's likely some praise there, but there's also areas for reconsideration and for redirection on the next call. And we can't hit rewind and run calls over again. I would love to be able to do that in my own EM practice. But there is a constant battle that I fight, that we fight, of that feeling that the medics, the AMTs are coming into the principal's office. I'm not the principal. You're coming in to hang out with coach, is the way that I feel like it should exist. And honestly, the run review starts for me, and a case review starts with a look in the mirror. Where is our education? Where is our protocol? How have we communicated this with we have a two medical director team here at MCHD, and so when I was in the assistant role, it was, did Dr. Dixon and I say this the right way in CE? Did I say it closely enough to him, or did we create discord? We have Dr. Mike DePasquale here now. He's been here over a year, and he's just a stellar EMS emergency medicine physician. I couldn't be luckier to have a partner like him, but we're not the same person. And so some of it for me is always, where did we drop the ball? Where do we have room for improvement on the system side before we ever get to looking at the medics chart? But then sometimes we have to redirect and give feedback and give constructive, criticism and praise for the next call, because it's not about rewinding and fixing that call. You can't. You got to get better for the next one, because a lot of these problems that we see in emergency care, while the cases are bizarre and out there and one-of-a-kind situations, the concepts and the spots where we make missteps are oftentimes very repeated and very almost predictable. So if they're predictable and repeated, how can we develop cognitive forcing strategies and clinical mental pathways that allow us to dodge them? And that's the joy of my job. I love to talk about medicine more than anything else in the work that we do. But for so often, that was an in-person event where we would sit in a conference room in the admin building, and medics were just, I mean, to the verge of diaphoresis, tachycardia, tears, muscle strain and rhabdo. I mean, I say that almost half joking. It was really a lesson for me because I didn't understand how that worked. And then one day it hit me. I work mostly shift blocks. I work a lot of Thursday through Sunday emergency room shifts in my world. And when my phone rings on a Tuesday and it's my medical director, my boss, my heart drops and I get nauseated. And I'm like, gosh, dang, what did I do wrong? And so I've been in the medic's boat. So what we've done to try to fix that is really utilize WebEx, no conflict. WebEx is our communication HIPAA protected tool here at MCHD. And so we've really tried to up the level of sort of connectability so that the technology isn't a drag, and use WebEx on shift with medics for run reviews. It takes a little bit of that under the heat lamp. Everybody's around the table from clinical and the medics sitting on the other side, and we're going to do an interrogation to, hey, we're going to have sort of a webinar, virtual chat about medicine. I like in person so much. I like to see people's face. I feel like there's less context and tone that's lost, but I've just accepted it. People don't like to sit around the table with me necessarily, no matter how much I want them to, because it's not an innate fun thing to do to get your work filleted open and looked at from the inside out. So we felt like there's been a little bit less resistance and a little bit more back and forth conversation, less stress from virtual case reviews. The other thing it allows us to do over that 1,100 square miles that we serve with more and more trucks on the street, there's no need to come into a singular admin spot, because for some of our East and West County folks, that could be an hour depending on the time of day. That's one way. And so it keeps folks at their station in their districts. And so it makes it a little more palatable from that standpoint. So that's been one way. We've also rolled out video laryngoscopes, new video scopes over the past year that have recording capability. And so we've really tried to up the ante on our airway management feedback. And so all of our airways that we take, or all the airways that we perform here at MCHD from an intubation standpoint, they're 100% medical director reviewed. We pull those, we edit them as a team, and then we review the chart itself. We look at the crew and the district chief, or whatever leadership is involved in that call. And those edited clips are then sent back to the crew and the team that was involved on that call with individualized medical director feedback. And so we really tried to, and that doesn't involve me face to face with them, and it allows us to sort of extend ourselves out into their educational space without physically having to be around the station table. I'd love to be around, 30 station tables, but it's not possible. So we feel like that, really trying to be intentional about using things like WebEx and, virtual feedback, but still be one-on-one from medical direction helps to maybe make that humongous feeling sort of shrink a little bit.
Yeah, it's really hard. As program director, when I walk into the classroom, everybody kind of does that pucker factor, and you can hear the Velcro, the fabric ripping off the seat. And it's like, no, nobody's in trouble. I'm just in the area. I just want to say hello and see how you guys are doing, take the pulse on things. But at the same time, sometimes I'm there because somebody's doing something wrong. And so you don't want to be the bad guy all the time. But at the same time, when needed, you have to do what you have to do. But it is a challenge of anybody in leadership.
And you don't really get that feeling of appreciation for the folks that have those difficult conversations with you in your life until after the fact. I can think back to those mentors that held me accountable, and I hold them in the dearest, most precious regard today. But at the time, I thought, I won't tell you what I thought because we'd have to censor it. And that's human nature. So I think that's been a learning process for me in this leadership educational role. Most of my teaching prior to coming into an EMS medical director role was much more low stakes. It wasn't a delegated practice situation. It was more of a collaborative peer-to-peer. And there is a hierarchy, there is a power gradient when it comes to the medical director talking to their paramedics and EMTs, or in your case, to the the education lead, talking to the students, because you're the one that pass or fail them. And in my situation, the medics are under our medical direction, under my medical direction license. And so I've come to grips with that, and I've just accepted that that's a part of what I have to do. And so to overcome that, I only feel like there's one way, and that's to be consistent to be as consistent as we can be, to make it very clear at all times that we're here to get better for the next case, that we, medical direction, work for the medics, in that it's our job to provide framework, consistency, clarity in education and protocol and feedback. And there's no easy button. And it just takes time. You have to try to build relationships within those discussions. We're lucky enough to have mandatory education sessions quarterly at MCHD. So I do get, for the most part, FaceTime at least 4 times a year. We don't right now have as much field time as I would like. I have a love-hate relationship with field time. I do love to be with the crews in their space. I also know that sometimes over 1,100 square miles, if you catch a couple ankle pains over a 4 or 8 hour shift, that's not always terribly efficient. So that's probably a place where we're not doing as well. I'm not doing as well as I could, is to try to really look towards ways to create efficiency and maximize and prioritize field time. I think our medics would probably say that. So that's a pretty honest answer. I'm also not a medic, and I'm not a firefighter, and the medics hear me say this, but it's not my comfortable place. I'm comfortable in the teaching role. I'm comfortable in a small group across the table. I'm comfortable in the ED in bed 7, managing shock or trauma patient. But the field is a little bit outside of my element, to be perfectly honest. And so it's something I've got to continue to work towards. So that's probably the deficiency I would throw out there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I had to learn when I got into the program director role, and I share it with my instructors, is be friendly, but I'm not your friend. I'll be friendly to you when I'm giving you feedback, even if it's difficult feedback, but I'm not your friend. And that kind of helps create that separation, which is, like you said, it's really, really hard. One of the things that I think you've done probably better than most medical directors out there, I mean, you've recorded 150 podcasts and have over 1 million listens. So
Yeah.
you are basically getting the message out there. And I think that's really hard in this day and age, to be a full-time medical director and to be connecting with your crews, especially the size that you are. What's one of the lessons that you've learned as a result of doing the podcast, or how has it helped communicate to your crews?
Well, the podcast is, I'm as proud of it as anything that I've done individually, professionally, but it was a lot of support from a lot of people. I couldn't have done it without admin and, executive support here, from our clinical chief at the time, Jordan Anderson, when I walked in his office and said, "Hey, we need a mic and a soundboard, and I want to do a podcast." And he didn't immediately say, "Get out of here, you crazy person." That was probably 2017. But there's a story behind that helps to explain it. Dr. Dixon hired me with the purpose of, come teach, we'll figure the rest out. And the idea was to augment the mandatory education sessions that we had and have had here for, decades, which I value more than anything as the medical director. Time for folks come in to think and talk about clinical medicine 4 times a year with the medical director. How lucky can you be? But there's also 4 times a year, there's a lot of time in between those sessions. And so the medics, like all sponges out there, they want more. They want more education. They want more vent. They want more physiology. They want more pharm. So my first assignment here in the role of assistant medical director was to craft a staggered non-mandatory program that would fit in between our mandatory quarterly sessions. And so I did a poll of the medics and, formally and informally, what's the topics we've not talked about that you want to hear about? And I got diabetes management, pre-hospital into hospital. I got COPD versus CHF. I got toxicology and tox emergencies. There was a 4th one that I can't remember, but I spent a lot of hours trying to put together the best content that I could. Looking back, it wasn't great, but I was new at this. But I surely put the effort in. And we scheduled like medical director minutes, and these were longer than minutes. They were between an hour and 2 hours of lecture content time, old school, formal classroom, PowerPoint. And it was good stuff. I still have the presentations and proud of the education that's in there. In session one, we had 17. In session two, we had 15. In session three, we had 14. In session, on and on, 19, 21, 12 out of, at the time, 300 employees. So we're batting below 10%. And it was the same 14, 15, 19 really interested individuals. So not only was it a very small percentage, it was the same percentage. And after the fifth one, I believe, because I started in 2016, so we were probably into 2017, approaching 2018. I went into our clinical chief's office and I said, I'm happy to keep doing this. Like, this is great. I like this job. I like y'all. It's really pushed me to be clinically stronger as an emergency physician because I got a bunch of whip smart people beating down my door, picking apart my medical decisions. And I learned how to write protocols through this time, which is way harder than it seems. I think it's an underrated, really difficult thing to do well. But we got 15 people coming, and I can name the 15 who are going to be there. Like, this is inefficient. I think, and we're taxpayer supported, elected board here in Montgomery County, third service EMS system. And so, my hours are valuable. At the time, I was an independent contractor, basically a vendor. I'm like, I'm not sure we're getting out of this what we need. And, he tried, I wasn't on the ledge, but I was close. So I was just like, this is not going well. I don't feel like I'm succeeding. And we tried to make a competition out of it. We tried to give away some Starbucks gift cards. We tried some really corny stuff to improve attendance, and it just wasn't working. And I got in my car one afternoon after this conversation and being talked off the ledge of what are we doing here? And sometimes in your car with your Bluetooth and your phone, the phone audio automatically just pops on for whatever reason. I'm a techno dummy, so it probably happens to me more than most. Scott Weingart comes on blaring in my car from MCHD. And I don't know why it was a light bulb, but I just thought, I don't go to the hospital on my day off to hear a lecture about hepatic encephalopathy management. Like, I listen to this guy when I'm driving to and from work. And now, this was 7-8 years ago. Everybody's got a podcast now, which is great because I love podcasts and I'm a listener. And I just think it's a really awesome asynchronous way to meet people where they are. But at the time, it was a little bit weirder. I think Dr. Jarvis was probably podcasting then. Obviously, Weingart and MCHD was relatively new then. But I came back in the next day and I said, hey, we need a podcast. Like these, and it's Montgomery County's big. Folks work EMS schedules so they can block their work. And so they don't often live across the street from the EMS stations. And so we got a lot of folks that drive in from down in Houston and from, over towards College Station and up north and Walker County. We got people coming from all over here at MCHD. A 30-minute drive time is standard in Houston and most of Texas, So I said, let's stick to 20 to 30 minutes and let's see if the medical directors can talk to the medics that way. And for some odd reason, nobody ran me out of there. We started with some pretty clear deal breakers. We weren't going to go long. We weren't going to chit chat. I'm not a funny person. I don't have comedic skills or timing at all. And so some people have commented in the past, my favorite, what people think is a maybe derogatory or negative. I like it makes my heart feel good. Is like, you guys just kind of talk straightforward through medicine and there's not a lot of bells and whistles. And when they say that, I'm like, exactly. That was planned because I don't want to leave my wheelhouse. And I can listen to some podcasts where I feel like it can get a little rambly. I don't, nobody wants to hear about my draft beer of choice for the weekend or who I want to win the college football playoff. There's other sports shows that are much more talented and insightful that can answer those. So we kind of stuck to those tenets, and we always have approached the podcast almost, I won't say always because we're approaching 200 now. We've always tried to start with the foundation that we're talking to MCHD medics. And what's blown me away about the progression is how many other people out there care. It's been totally unexpected. The number of people that listen across America and across the world and the feedback that we've gotten and questions and episode ideas from Canada and Australia and just all over the place is mind-blowing. But every episode is based in this is your medical direction team talking to you, MCHD crews. We don't have enough of us. You all are too spread out. There's too many of you. Here's the clinical topic that we beat around the office all week. And that's really the other piece that we see so often, is that these cases come through, and your quality chart reviewers and your clinical chief and your quality lead, and the other EMS chiefs on the ops side, we will talk through these amazing cases or the problem cases, and it sort of stays in the bubble. And so the other, people always worried. I never was as worried, probably a little bit, do you have content that can go? Like, at some point, are you going to be done? And it's like, even now, I think about the conversations we've had this week, and we popped another 2 or 3 ideas out, because we just want to amplify the conversations that we have here, because we have all of the learning points and all of the exemplary care that happens across the county. If we talk about it with 2 medics in my office, then 402 need to hear it. And so you put that together with developing medicine. Just this last week, New England Journal, ketamine versus etomidate for intubation in the ED and ICU. And there's some findings there that would probably shock some people, definitely shocked me. So there's always new things coming out, combined with the just craziness that we find ourselves in the world of EMS. I don't know that we're ever going to be at a loss for episodes.
Somebody said one time that if you solve it for one person, you can probably solve it for more people. And I think that's so true. If you're seeing it and you think you're operating in a silo, but you're not, you're actually kind of the voice of EMS. And so it's really a valuable service.
It's not super complex. I feel like when I have the conversation a third time, or if we address the problem for the third time, then it's not limited to those 3. I say this to medics all the time, your partners, your colleagues, your station mates, like, you're not sometimes there's one-offs, and we don't talk about one-offs, but patterns are so easy to recognize. You just have to start looking for them and being mindful.
Yeah, I like to divide things into system problems and people problems. And that's probably a conversation that we need to have some other time. I know you have another commitment here. But, basically there's a system problem, we can deal with that. A people problem is you don't get up and get to work on time. But yeah, sorting those out.
I would throw in the really complex situations, and the ones that I think are probably closer to reality is when there's both. I often think that, it's sometimes one or the other, but a lot of times it's one leading to the other, and it can go either direction. So, that's where consistency is hard, because we don't operate in a black and white world. And so I just think, as long as you're looking at both systems and people, and, for us, my perspective is from medical direction. And I tell the medics this, and I hope they believe me. I start with the system. I don't start with them, because oftentimes when you find that system error, if you're opening that conversation with, hey, let's talk about this run, and before we get into your role, I want to tell you where we failed you and where we're going to improve what we're doing. That makes that feedback that you have to give them where their ball drop is, I think, a little better received. I don't know if that's the case, but that's where we are today.
I'm a huge fan of Jocko, and Jocko is, 100% responsibility for my part. And I think the fact that you as an organization are taking responsibility for your part says a lot. And then you hope that the crews get the fact that you're not giving up their side of responsibility. You have a part and they have a part. It's like 2 partners dancing, and you don't want to step on each other's toes, and you have to continue to dance. You can't just quit. So, yeah.
Sometimes we have to. Sometimes in the end, the clinical authority, lies with medical direction, and that's just the way that it is. But you want to avoid that as a declarative or an ultimatum or a line in the sand as much as you can, because realistically, I do this job because, number one, I fancy myself a teacher. My mom and dad were teachers, and I think it's genetic, and I enjoy it more than anything. Seeing someone reach a goal that they want to reach, and know that you played some small part in helping them get there. That's a part of it. But there also is the part that, in some way, it is a delegated practice state, and the protocols have to be followed, and there can be a black and white nature to it. But, I'm here and I do this for no other reason than, we want to get our medics where they want to be. We want them to feel comfortable taking care of patients. In the end, I feel like I get like the ultimate don't know, the ultimate spot as an emergency physician. I take care of my own patients, and that's great. But then I watch and see what our medics do out there every day, and these it's just amazing patient care and these, cold water immersion protocol and end of life hospice protocols and IV nitro for acute pulmonary edema. And I see our folks putting that into play and know that a little bit of that design and a little bit of that education, we or I got to play a role in a small part in the team. And I get to, in some indirect way, take care of so many more patients and take care of our people and help them get where they want to be. It multiplies, and it's like I say, I'm the luckiest medical director in the world. I would not trade. I love our people here in the county. I love our team, and it's just it's a pretty cool chair to get to sit in, and I am beyond grateful.
I think in education, some people have that misconception that those who can do and those who can't teach, and I completely disagree with it, because I think that we're here on planet Earth to serve more people. And as a paramedic, I serve 10,000 patients. As we've trained thousands of people, my leverage has gone, way beyond that. If every medic out there goes and treats 10,000 patients, I mean, that's a huge amplification. And you're doing the same thing as a medical director. So thank you for that. If somebody wants to come and work with you for MCHD, how do they apply? How can they get a hold of you or find out more?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple websites and shameless plugs. If you want to come work for us, which is the last crazy piece from the podcast, is so many folks it's been an amazing recruiting tool. So I'm beyond proud of that. But our job application, job posting website is www.paramedicjobs.org. Paramedicjobs.org, and you will find us and you can apply. When the hiring cycles are for which groups, do not ask me because I lose track. But www.paramedicjobs.org, wherever you listen to podcasts out there or on YouTube, MCHD Paramedic Podcast. You can follow, subscribe, all those things that I'm supposed to say. But we're on all of the regular podcast platforms, and we've got a YouTube channel, which is insane. Our PIO, Missy Willingham, came to me and said, "Hey, I want to record the podcast and put them on YouTube." I'm like, who watches someone talk on YouTube? I'm of maybe a past generation. And she said, lots of people do. And we've had an explosion of folks that watch us talk on the podcast, which is wild to me. So YouTube, Google Play, Apple, wherever you listen, MCHD Paramedic Podcast. And if you have specific podcast feedback, podcast at mchd-tx.org. That's our podcast email. So hit us up at any of those. You can, the podcast at mchd-tx.org comes to me. So I love questions. I love to give folks, we share all of our educational stuff. If there's anything that we've talked about on the podcast that you'd like to teach on, all of these have pretty simple outlines that I use. And so I'm always happy to share those. So whatever we can do to help make paramedics, EMTs, and AMTs lives easier, jobs better, that's going to impact patients. And the last piece of my job that I love more than anything is that I believe that we in EMS, and I say we, but especially those of y'all that are primarily in the field, you're as underappreciated and undersupported. And I don't mean from an organizational standpoint. I mean more from a societal standpoint here in America, as could possibly be the case. So if, as one person, I can be out there fighting the good fight to have your backs, that's my other pillar in this role, is that whether that's dealing with the hospital system or, society in general or education or whatever it is, like the way that we mind and care for our EMS crews here in the United States, just we need to do better. And a lot of that's out of our control and governmental, and I don't want to go there, but if we can share and we can help build folks up who may not have the same educational support that I have and we have here at MCHD. We're big believers in free and open and sharing. So please reach out.
That is incredible. Thank you for all of that. It's definitely needed. So until next time, Dr. Patrick, thank you again for all the great work you're doing. Take care.
Thank you, Matt.
If you'd like to become an EMT, a paramedic, or even earn your bachelor's degree in EMS from Texas State University, visit EMTSacademy.com or scan the QR code on your screen. At EMTS Academy, we train the next generation of EMS professionals from the classroom to the field. Thanks for listening. And remember, the world needs more people who can stay calm, think clearly, and save lives. Until next time, stay safe.